Imagine you are the last person on Earth who knows how to make fire. Not because civilization collapsed, not because of a war, but because almost everyone, every face you've ever known, every voice you've ever heard is already gone. This is not fiction. This is not a thought experiment. This happened to us, to your ancestors, to the only family you will ever truly have. 74,000 years ago, humanity was reduced to a number so small, so terrifyingly small, that the entire human species could have fit inside a single sports stadium. We were not thriving. We were not surviving. We were barely breathing. To understand how close we came to never existing, you need to understand what the world looked like before it all went wrong. 74,000 years ago, Homo sapiens, our species, your species, had already been walking the earth for nearly 100,000 years. We were not primitive cave dwellers grunting at shadows. We were sharp, we were social. We made tools, we told stories, we buried our dead with intention. Some of us had already learned to fish the deep ocean. Some were painting symbols on rock walls. We were, in every meaningful sense, human.
And there were many of us, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands. The estimates vary, and they matter enormously to this story, as you'll soon understand. We had spread across Africa. Some of us had already begun pushing into the Middle East, testing the edges of a wider world. We'd survived ice ages before. We'd endured droughts that turned rivers into dust. Every generation faced a world that was trying to kill them, and every generation won. But this time was different. This time, something was building beneath the surface of the earth, literally beneath the surface, on an island in what is now Indonesia. Something that had been building for 2 million years. Something that, when it finally let go, would become the most catastrophic eruption in the last 2 million years of this planet's history. The Toba Supervolcano. Located beneath what is today Lake Toba in Sumatra, Indonesia, the largest volcanic lake in the world, 100 kilometers long, 30 kilometers wide, 505 meters deep, a lake so vast it was once the mouth of a wound that nearly ended our species. And on one particular day, a day that had no name, because the people who witnessed it had no writing, no calendars, no way of knowing they were about to witness the end of almost everything, the mountain broke.
The eruption didn't come quietly. When Toba finally released, it expelled approximately 2,800 cubic kilometers of volcanic material into the atmosphere. To put that number in context, the Mount St. Helens eruption of 1980, the one that blew the top off a mountain that killed 57 people, that was called one of the worst natural disasters in American history, expelled about 1 cubic kilometer. Toba expelled nearly 3,000 times more. The eruption column rose so high it punched through the stratosphere. The ash cloud spread across the sky like a living thing, expanding, thickening, traveling on winds that carried it across South Asia, across the Indian Ocean, across the Middle East. Volcanic ash, up to 15 centimeters deep, settled over the Indian subcontinent. In some places, the ashfall was meters thick. If you were standing in southern India that day, you wouldn't have seen the sky darken slowly. You would have stood outside one morning and watched, in real time, the sun disappear. Not an eclipse, not a storm, a permanent gray ceiling descending on the world. And it would not lift, not for years. The truly devastating weapon Toba unleashed was invisible. Sulfur dioxide, billions of tons of it, blasted into the stratosphere where it reacted with water vapor and formed a veil of sulfuric acid aerosols that wrapped around the entire planet. This veil didn't trap heat. It reflected sunlight, bouncing the sun's energy back into space before it could warm the ground below. Global temperatures dropped. By how much? Scientists debate this. Some say 6 degrees Celsius. Some say 10, maybe 15 degrees in certain regions. To understand what that means, consider the difference between today's climate and the peak of the last ice age, the era of woolly mammoths and mile-thick glaciers, is roughly 5 to 6 degrees. Toba's volcanic winter. Global temperatures plunged. The volcanic winter may have lasted between 6 and 10 years, followed by a prolonged ice age lasting another 1,000 years. Some call this the Toba catastrophe. The numbers tell the story better than any name can. Plants died. When plants died, the animals that ate them died. When the animals died, the humans who hunted them faced a choice: find another food source or starve. In a world where every ecosystem had collapsed simultaneously, where the cold had crept into Africa, into the Middle East, into every corner where our ancestors had ever set foot, there was no other food source to find, so they starved, and froze, and died. Not all of them, but almost all of them.
Here's the part that should make you stop what you're doing and actually think. In the 1990s, scientists began studying something peculiar in human DNA. When you compare the genetic diversity of our species to almost any other large mammal, chimpanzees, gorillas, even cheetahs, you find something that should not be there. We are extraordinarily similar to one another. So much that two chimpanzees living in the same forest can have more genetic variation between them than any two humans chosen at random from opposite sides of the planet. Something in our past, something catastrophic, compressed humanity like a fist closing around fire. Geneticists call it a population bottleneck, a moment when the breeding population of our species collapsed to such a small number that nearly all genetic variation was lost. The individuals who survived, they became the template. Every human being alive today traces their DNA back to those same few survivors. How few survivors are we talking about? The estimates range. Some genetic models suggest the breeding population dropped to as few as 10,000 individuals. Some models suggest even fewer, as low as 3,000 to 5,000 breeding adults. Not total humans, breeding adults. For context, there are more people in a typical university campus than may have represented all of reproducing humanity at our lowest point. If that campus burned down, humanity, as a genetic lineage, might have ended. All of recorded history, all of philosophy, all of art and science and love. It almost didn't happen. Now, here is where it gets complicated, because science rarely gives us clean answers, and the Toba catastrophe is no exception. Not every researcher agrees that Toba caused the bottleneck. Some geneticists place the bottleneck at a different time period, perhaps earlier, perhaps not linked to the eruption at all. Some archaeologists point to evidence that humans survived in southern India through the Toba event, citing stone tool sites found beneath and above the ash layer. Same tools, same people, continuous occupation. Others push back on this interpretation. The tools might have been made by a different species, earlier hominids, not our direct ancestors. The debate is alive, ongoing, and fiercely contested in the pages of the world's most prestigious scientific journals. But here's what is not contested. There was a bottleneck. There was a moment when humanity was reduced to a fragile thread. Whether Toba pulled the scissors or something else did, the thread nearly snapped, and somewhere in southern Africa, in caves along the coastline, a small group of humans held on. The southern tip of Africa was, in some ways, insulated from the worst. The ashfall didn't reach this far. The coastline, the meeting point of two oceans, provided something that the dying interior of the continent could not. Food that didn't depend on rainfall, on seasons, on growing things. Shellfish, sea urchins, fish, seals. The ocean, indifferent to volcanic winters, kept producing, and the humans, smart enough, or lucky enough, to be living on those shores when the sky broke, kept eating. In the caves of Blombos, along the cliffs of what is now the Western Cape of South Africa, archaeologists have found the evidence of those survivors. Ochre they used for painting, perforated shells they may have worn as jewelry, engraved geometric patterns that suggest abstract thinking, symbolic culture, the deep interior life of a mind fully capable of meaning. These were not broken refugees huddled against extinction. These were human beings who woke up each morning with purpose, who remembered the people they had lost, who told stories around fires about how the world had once been warmer, greener, louder, and somehow, impossibly, held on. They did not know they were the last ones. They did not know that the entire future of humanity lived inside them, fragile as breath. 70,000 years is a long time. The world warmed again, slowly. The volcanic winter faded, ecosystems recovered, and when they did, the survivors moved out of their coastal refuges back into the interior of Africa, northward, and then, around 70,000 years ago, out of Africa altogether. The Great Expansion had begun. From a handful of survivors on a rocky coastline, we would eventually become 8 billion people speaking 7,000 languages, building cities on the moon's doorstep, splitting atoms, composing symphonies, asking questions about our own existence that had no answers. All of it, born from that small, stubborn, surviving fire. Today, if you fly to North Sumatra and stand on the rim of Lake Toba, you look down into the caldera of the volcano that nearly ended the human story. The water is calm. Fishing boats move across it slowly. Villages dot the shores. Children swim in the shallows of a lake that, 74,000 years ago, was the mouth of the most violent geological event in 2 million years of Earth's history. It is, in the strangest way, beautiful. But beauty isn't the lesson here. The lesson is something harder, something more unsettling, and ultimately, something more important. We exist because we were lucky. Not because we were the strongest species, not because we were the most deserving. The Neanderthals were strong. They were intelligent. They made tools. They cared for their injured. They buried their dead. They're gone. Our species survived not because of some divine mandate, not because of superiority, but because a small group of our ancestors happened to be in the right place, on a coastline, in a southern refuge, when the sky fell. Luck, geography, the ocean's indifference, a diet that didn't depend on sunlight. That is the thread that connects every human being alive today. You are the child of people who refused to die when almost everything was dying. Every grandmother in your family tree goes back, eventually, to those survivors on those cliffs. Every genius, every saint, every tyrant, every ordinary person who ever loved someone, all of them, tracing back to the same small, terrified, enduring group of humans who held on. We are, all of us, the children of the last ones. Toba could erupt again. Yellowstone could. The Campi Flegrei under Naples. The Ira caldera beneath Kagoshima. The Earth is not finished testing us. It has never been finished testing us. The next time, if there is a next time, we will have something our ancestors didn't have. Warning systems, satellite monitoring, food reserves, global communication, the ability to see a catastrophe building before it breaks. Whether that's enough, nobody knows. But the next time you feel small, the next time the world feels enormous and indifferent and overwhelming, remember this. 74,000 years ago, your ancestors faced a world that was actively trying to end them. They had no technology, no early warning, no global reserves. They had fire and each other and the stubbornness to eat shellfish on a cold coastline and wait for the sky to clear. And here you are. You are the proof that it was worth it. Every single one of them, every hungry, terrified, grieving survivor who kept the fire burning when the world went dark. They held on so that you could be here, asking questions, watching a video on the internet, thinking about what it means to be human. That is the most staggering thing science has ever quietly whispered to us. You were almost never born, and yet here you are.